All right, fellas, now. George Kambosos just made his return against Richardson Hitchens in an attempt to shock the world and steal Hitchens' IBF super lightweight title. And while on paper this fight looked like it was going to be one-way traffic, the pre-fight build-up and strong promotion from both men meant Kambosos once again drew the attention of the boxing world and reignited a genuine rivalry that seemed to give this fight a real edge for Hitchens. It was the first time he had a major stage to showcase his skills to a global audience, while for Kambosos it represented one last chance at glory, one final opportunity to remind the sport who he was and what he could still do. So now we need to break down exactly what just happened inside that ring, and also look ahead to what might be next for both of them, but just to set the scene a bit more. This clash between Hitchens and Kambosos had been simmering for quite some time. If you followed either man on Twitter, you'd have seen the endless back and forth between them. But truthfully, the only reason they were even beefing, and the only reason this fight came to life in the first place, was because Kambosos had been chasing a fight with Liam Parrow. At the time, Parrow held the IBF belt at 140 pounds, and Kambosos saw it as the perfect chance to make a true mega fight down under. But that plan fell apart when Parrow lost, and since Kambosos was already tied into a matchroom deal and waiting for that fight, the logical next step was to face the man who beat Parrow, and that was Hitchens. Personally, I kind of wished Kambosos had stayed at lightweight, because he's not a naturally big fighter, and a move up to 140 never made much sense to me, especially when some of the hardest fights at 135 were on the verge of moving up themselves. But Kambosos did make the move and even took a stay-busy fight beforehand where he looked far from impressive. So when we arrived at fight night, he entered as a heavy underdog. For a reason, he was older, smaller, and against a slick boxer with physical advantages. But the thing about Kambosos is, you can never truly count him out once the bell rings. And from the opening round, he came out aggressive, clearly not wanting to sit on the outside and wait. Hitchens immediately went to his strengths, working behind a sharp jab that made the most of his 6-inch reach advantage, and following up with crisp right hands early, there was a faint glimmer of hope that Kambosos might find a way to close the distance effectively. But by the end of round 2, the damage was already visible. A swelling had formed under his right eye thanks to Hitchens' precise jabs, yet Kambosos kept pressing forward, his aggression admirable. But leaving huge openings for Hitchens to exploit, Hitchens clearly came in well prepared. Knowing that Devin Haney in his 2 fights with Kambosos never managed to drop him, partly because Haney rarely worked the body, whereas Vasily Lomachenko did focus on the body and found great success. So Hitchens went to the body early, and often by the 5th round he landed a punishing shot downstairs that visibly hurt Kambosos. And honestly, it was remarkable the Australian even made it past that round. His heart cannot be questioned, but his mobility and sharpness were already fading badly. Then in the 8th round, Hitchens found the decisive breakthrough, once again targeting the body and dropping Kambosos for the count. The fight was over, and in truth it had played out exactly as most expected. As an Aussie, I had hoped Kambosos could pull it off, but Hitchens was simply a step ahead in every department this time. Now the real intrigue lies in what happens next for both men. For Hitchens, the sky is the limit. This victory will catapult him onto a much bigger stage, and with so many notable names across the 140 and 147 divisions, and the fact that many of those fighters are either on breaks or reluctant to fight each other, the timing could not be better for him in terms of negotiating big bouts. On top of that, he's now a promotional free agent despite a good working relationship with Eddie Hearn, meaning if another promoter offers a bigger payday or bigger opportunity, he's in the perfect spot to take it after the fight. Hitchens called out Devin Haney and had Teófimo López step into the ring to express interest as well. But it's obvious that Haney is the one Hitchens truly wants. Next, the complication, however, is weight. Hitchens looked extremely drained at the weigh-in, and it's clear his days at 140 might be limited. Yet moving up to 147 right away might not be his preference unless that's where the bigger fights present themselves. He could theoretically stay at 140, hold on to his belt, and face whatever challengers come along. But considering Teófimo López still has a title at the weight, and that some potential opponents like Gary Russell Jr. are seen as high-risk, low-reward matchups, it's possible Hitchens might bide his time and wait for a mega fight rather than taking on dangerous opposition for smaller paydays. My best guess is that Haney is the most likely big opportunity on the horizon for him. Even if it requires some patience on the flip side, the question of what's next for Kambosos is just as interesting, because while you have to give the man his flowers for always wanting to face the best, his performance here suggests it might be time to consider walking away from active competition. He's a throwback fighter who could have taken easy, stay-busy bouts after shocking the world against Teófimo López, but instead he went straight after Haney and Lomachenko, bringing both to Australia for massive stadium fights. No, he didn't win, but he showed zero fear and delivered the type of high-profile events Australian boxing hadn't seen in decades, and he did it without much help from the local mainstream. Sports media, which tends to ignore boxing unless it's on Foxtel under the no-limit promotional banner, meaning fighters like Kambosos or Jayopataya get very little coverage despite their achievements in that context. What George has done for the sport here is extraordinary, but after this latest loss, I believe the time is right for him to call it a day on his fighting career. I remember when he went on the Joe Rogan Experience shortly after beating Lopez, he spoke about training with Manny Pacquiao, and how heartbreaking it was to watch Pacquiao's final fight because Manny's footwork had slowed. His punches lacked their old snap, and it was obvious his prime was gone. Watching Kambosos against Hitchens gave me a similar feeling. He's only 32, but the sharpness and reflexes that made him special aren't quite there anymore. And the truth is, he's already achieved more than most fighters dream of. He's been a unified champion, fought in front of huge stadium crowds, inspired kids across Australia, and earned life-changing money. He doesn't need to chase anything more and certainly doesn't need to risk his health or tarnish his legacy by taking smaller domestic fights that don't match the scale of what he's already done. Sure, there are fighters like Liam Perro who might try to bait him into one last bout with trash talk, but that kind of fight doesn't serve him in the long run. Instead, I think the best move would be to focus on his growing promotional company, which is starting to pick up talented prospects in Australia. He has the profile and credibility to take local fighters onto the world stage, and that could be his lasting contribution to the sport beyond his own career, as someone who has already proven he can put together major events even without mainstream support. He's in a unique position to help the next generation succeed internationally, and whatever decision he makes, I just hope it's the one that's genuinely best. For him, not just financially, but personally, because while he can be brash in his trash talk, he's a genuinely good bloke who's always carried himself with pride in the ring. And if he chooses to hang them up now, he can do. So knowing he went out fighting the best of his era and left a real mark on the sport here in Australia now. With all that said, I'm curious to see how fans react to both men's situations. Hitchens could be on the verge of breaking into boxing's elite tier if he plays his cards right, while Kambosos stands at a crossroads where he can either chase a final run or bow out gracefully with his accomplishments intact.
What's up, guys? Make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, like the video, and hit the bell icon to stay updated with all my latest content. More awesome videos coming soon. Stay tuned.